After immediately hopping over the border to North Dakota, we enjoy breakfast in Watford City amongst all the oil men and women. Our target for the day is Theodore Roosevelt National Park, which has two separate entrances. We will explore both before discovering North Dakota wine and Dickinson, and then traveling the full length of the Enchanted Highway. As we begin our day, first in Montana and then North Dakota, it is overcast in an area full of oil fields. When we eventually come to eat our hearty breakfast in Watford City, we realize it is the furthest point from Los Angeles we will reach on this trip. You may have noticed we have been driving a Volkswagen Taos to this point, and if you know us, you know we only roll in tiny hatchbacks back home. We decided to rent a vehicle with a little more surface clearance and interior space for this trip because we wanted to carry a bit more than usual and take quite a few dirt roads. It was also a good choice because it allowed us to put 6,000 miles on someone else's car, which almost is worth the price of the rental itself. Thankfully, after breakfast, the scenery and the weather improved as we turned south. Just before crossing the Little Missouri River, you come to the north entrance of the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. The park gets far fewer visitors than nearby ones located in Wyoming and South Dakota, but most visitors that do come only stop at the southern entrance on their way east or west on the interstate. The north entrance scenic route stays on the north bank of the Little Missouri and affords good views of the twisting river along its length. One of the most interesting stops is the Cannonball concretions, round balls of stone that immediately stand out from the Badlands landscapes. Our parks brochure tells us, when mineral-rich water seeps down through the porous layers that make up the Badlands, it can deposit those minerals in spaces or gaps in the sediments. The minerals act as a kind of glue, holding these sediments together, often forming around a core. As more and more layers are deposited, the concretions build outward like a pearl before being exposed by erosion. Apparently, there are unknown quantities of these cannonballs still waiting to be exposed. Because of the relatively light amount of traffic, the north entrance is also a great place to catch glimpses of bison, which seem to think of the road as their own. Between the two national parks entrances, we had the opportunity to visit Grassy Butte, a very small town that has a newly reopened historic post office museum. The old log and adobe post office with a sod roof was built in 1912 and used from 1913 to 1962. Inside, the museum keeps a collection of just about everything you would think an old post office might have in it, and much more. Just a bit east of the southern entrance is the Painted Canyon Visitor Center, and the 45-minute or so hike that we wanted to take. The overlook is reason enough to stop here, but the hike down into the canyon is really beautiful and gets you up close and personal with the Badlands. While Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks were both new for Nina, it took until day 6 for me to bag a new one, as I had visited those two on a cross-continent road trip back in 2002. But North Dakota's Theodore Roosevelt National Park was new to me, the 37th national park I have visited and thoroughly rewarding as a destination.
I made it.
Look at the cactus flowers. A few states too late on this Grand Teton Pilsner, but still refreshing after that hike.
Jared, I think there's a prairie dog town.
Prairie dog towns would be something we would see a lot of in the Badlands of North and South Dakota. Their curious residents always seemed to be just as interested in us as we were in them. After some very mild days in Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana, the heat waves that were affecting much of the country finally started to get us in the afternoon at Theodore Roosevelt. Despite this, there were a few small hikes we still had to do before leaving. Hi, horses. After leaving the south unit of the park, we crossed back through Medora and made our way to the interstate for a brief stint east, exiting at the first chance we had. This gave us the opportunity to go through the towns of Belfield, South Hart, and Dickinson and not miss a thing. In Dickinson, Nina had found a new winery had recently come into existence, and we had to check that out, of course.
North Dakota is not really a wine region. It is in the mountain states along with South Dakota, Montana, Utah, Nevada, and Wyoming, which are too cold to grow grapes. These wines are young and got high acid. It's not enough heat for grapes to fully ripe, but I would love to try them anyway. Very natural for some reason. It's very dry.
A unique highlight of the entire trip was the Enchanted Highway, a nickname of the road between the towns of Gladstone and Regent in North Dakota. This is the home of the largest scrap metal sculptures in the world, a 51-kilometer stretch of two-lane highway that has many exhibits to pull off and enjoy. Sculptor Gary Greff has been using his own money to maintain the pieces he built in 1989 to provide his home with a much-needed destination for tourist dollars. After the Enchanted Highway, we got to experience a healthy storm, first approaching, then diverting around it, and finally looking back to see a beautiful rainbow as the sun came back out. Heavy winds surrounded the storm, but we missed the downpours. This was our first time traveling with or even using a GoPro, and well, on day 6 we got the memory card full notice back when we were leaving the winery. This dramatically cut the amount of front-facing road videos we took for the rest of the trip, but we tried to do our best with our 2 phones. And suddenly, as we approached our very economical motel in Newell, South Dakota, the realization that the trip was already half over hit us hard. Hopefully the last 6 days could measure up to the first 6.